This is 21:15 British Standard Time, the Khoodeelaar television channel. The greeting is not used in these editions because these are editions being broadcast actually from the field of battle. And the battle is against the evilness personified that have prevented for the last 5 weeks at least the feeding of the 3 baby kittens. But I've been trying to feed them at their usual time. This is the peak hour of the evening meal time that they got me to serve them their dinner or evening meal for the 3 months prior to my being locked out by the criminals. So what I'm doing is I'm recording and streaming these items from the Prince Regent Lane, which is where the evilness personified have their things so-called foundation. And these 3 baby kittens are misdescribed as strays, which means that they haven't got any attached human beings looking after them. Now, I'm a kitten attached person for life, especially since the baby kitten, Scudgy one, arrived. Scudgy was spelt three different ways. Mainly, originally, spelled Squadie, Squadgy, by the D1. Now, the D1 is, of course, the D1 that was born, probably raised in Ilford, in Windsor Road. And the D1 and I were blessed with the kitten arrival. The name of the mummy of these Scudgy ones, I forget this minute. But that happened sometime in 1978. And it was in 1978 that all my siblings except Roshan, I think who are still in Bangladesh, and my parents decided to go to Silot. It was one of the most hectic years in my most hectic embattled life because I had reluctantly enrolled on what is now the University of Law on a professional barristers and solicitors qualification course that was being done in a place called the Bream's building off Chancery Lane, which is not far from the so-called Royal Courts of Justice. Now, remember in 1973, I had been already offered an admission to the bar by the Lincoln Inn. The details will take a book about 100 pages, but suffice to say that on principle, I refused to accept the bar. So that was 1978, which means that now, 2024, I would have been long past the age of retirement, whatever the profession, whatever the calling, whatever the actual platform, either as a member of the High Court or the Supreme Court or whatever. And I would have been older in terms of seniority to David Neuberger, Julia Neuberger's cousin, who was the first president of the UK Supreme Court when it was reorganized. So I'm sitting here half a century later, nearly, since, well, 51 years actually. 51 years after I was offered admission to the bar by the Lincoln Inn and rejecting it. All this stuff that I have rejected in my time are absolutely to do with ethics, morality, and principle. Now, kittens, three baby kittens. Now, all the kittens of whatever age, I call them kittens because the word kitten brings about an aura, a kind of feeling of protectiveness and hugging and blessing and holding them close. It is because I feel so powerfully about kittens that I don't want to get involved with kittens, if you see what I mean. So I was sat here for nearly 2 years. Well, 3 months ago, the kitten called I call him or her, the black and white one, began to arrive at about 9 o'clock in the evening. Outside the address called the 21D, Belgrave, Belgrave with a V for Victor, court, which is off the Prince Regent Lane, London, E13 8RP. When this kitten arrived, well, this kitten arrived once or twice, and I didn't know what to make of this. And then began to come regularly, which meant that it was tutoring me to provide a kind of meal at that time, which I began to do. And I had been doing that for several weeks, well, several months, after which suddenly one evening, after I came back from shopping with the kitten food, that I found myself locked out by these criminals personifying evilness, the evilly wrongly named Joy Foundation. So there I was sat outside, and the kittens were in need of food. So I gave them the food because I had already bought that evening's food. And I understood the message that they preferred the thing called, it's a Purina company that produces gourmet pouches. And these vandals, the kittens, convinced me that gourmet is the one that they preferred. So I gave them the gourmet from the sachets, pouches, and the black and white one ate. And on the second or the later that evening, this evilness personified, which is an evilness that sits in a thing called it's not called office, it's called porter cabin. This is what the shipwreck So he arrived outside the address 21D, and he repeatedly gave me threats saying that I should not be feeding the cats. He called. Now I cannot even begin to start a dialogue on that. How can you begin to have a dialogue about an evilness who is preventing you from feeding kittens? And as I say, I am emotionally, morally, ethically so outraged as I have been for the last 6, or more than 4.5 weeks or so, that I cannot begin to record a narrative about what happened and what the implications are. So the baby kitten, black and white one, well, every single kitten that you see to somebody like me is an absolute kind of realization, the physical embodiment of all that you could describe as hugging and loving and blessing and protectiveness for the human being. Now, in the current issue of a thing called Newham Voices, I have edited this word voices to read vices, like badness, which is apparently edited by a National Union of Journalists, so-called radical member X, called Aidan White. And it has got the current issue, which is September, but the date at the 30th of August, 2024, has got the main front page piece splash that Starmer is urged to help on the Newham crisis. And there is one splash there. And the second is a mural, apparently celebrating the probably mixed race, what's the name? Musician, singer, the British mixed race singer called Jimi Hendrix. And in the group photograph taken in front of the mural on the front page, is a very pleased looking Newham elected executive mayor, Roxana Fias. Very pleased. And on the inside of the same issue of the vices, Newham vices, is a supposedly deliberately detailed account describing apparently the plight, the financial plight that the regime fronted by Roxana Fias is now landed with in Newham dealing with housing. Now, Aidan White is so ignorant and so stupid that to describe his stupidity would entail prior introduction to the whole concept of housing, human rights, humanity, all the rest of it. And that would take longer than there is time on this or there is patience on my part. I'm absolutely, totally furious and I'm not exaggerating one bit. Now, at a kind of supporters gathering organized sometime either in December 2022 or January 2023 by the Newham Vices. Aidan Shitwhite went round when I'm sitting on the front benches or front chairs, and he went through the others without being seen by me because I was sitting at the front and briefing strategically chosen members of the collection, the people who are present there. there, he must have pointed at me and saying that whenever he, that is me, opens his mouth, shut him up, shut him down, just shut him down. He must have given them the sternest possible warning and instruction. It's like the evilness called Abdul Salik telling his Filipino mistress, who actually kept his business afloat because she was literate and she did the accounts and everything else in the place that he existed at during last years, 108 Brick Lane. He must have told her that when this man comes in, don't say a word. Because he must have told her whatever he told her, but he told her something that if she said anything to me, then it would be exploding in her face. Like he translated every one of my moves as being absolutely lethal. So what would happen? Every time I would go past and he would invite me wearing the disguise that he was my loyal disciple and he was a fan of mine, I would sit there because I spent in the period of 3 or 4 years that I agreed to enter his enterprise, I spent on average every sitting, I would say the equivalent of 10 pounds because it is in his congenital blood. The evilness would never, ever translate the invitation into an actual service as a host. And it would not be in my blood to even remotely expect him to act as a host. I am the great grandson of the Badshah. And my grandmother said that I am like the Badshah, which means I'm extremely kind and absolutely not beholden to anyone. And she pointed to a part of my body where she spotted a sign, which my grandmother said that was the sign of continuation of my great grandfather, the Badshah. And she said, you, that is me, was like my great grandfather, the Badshah. And I'd continue his heritage and his tradition. And the three kittens are absolute blessings from God. And I am lost for words as to how to convey to them my loss of words and my loss of intellectual and moral accessibility to the space where I could serve them the meals. So I pray with that prayer. La ilaha, la ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu min az-zalimin. La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu min az-zalimin. La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu min az-zalimin. I pray to God and I pray to God that God may give these baby kittens the sustenance they deserve, the need, absolutely. The safety that they need and they deserve, most certainly. And the protection from the evilnesses, interruptions, and disturbances diversions for as long as the need. And I pray to God that the God enables me to find a peaceful way so that I'm able to resume feeding the baby kitten ones as soon as possible. This one I'll end at this particular point. And then I'll update on the baby kitten. Well, the baby kittens like the baby angel Geronimo, under whose banner this whole program is broadcast. The baby angel Geronimo's mom, human mom, second human mom, is a woman called Helen MacDonald. Although professionally trained and used to the professional kind of norms, etc., of the veterinary industry, I think Helen MacDonald, despite the very bitter harassment that the evil DEFRA, depraved DEFRA, subjected her to, she's still under the impression that Keir Starmer or the British government can be depended on to deliver some sort of justice. In the Times, at the weekend, I think, Saturday's London Times, owned by Rupert Murdoch, there is a piece which has a chunk or a few chunks of quotations from Helen MacDonald saying words to the effect that the British government should tell her about the last, I'm not going to even spell it out, kind of moments of baby angel Geronimo. How could she do that? How could she even think that she should express them with anything like this? From August, 31st of August 2021, a year before I had to go to hospital, I began the banner on the program and started to include this baby angel Geronimo. And the baby angel Geronimo is an angel, God's blessing. And when the day of judgment comes, the evidence of what Boris Johnson did and said, the evidence of what Christian evilness, middleness said, that depraved defraud did and said, the evidence of the evilness Keir Starmer, who colluded with Boris Johnson on the issue of being hostile and cruel against baby angel Geronimo, and all the other criminals who actually published comments hostile to baby angel Geronimo. Evidence of all of that would be put before God on the day of judgment. The evidence of the High Court judge called Griffiths. The High Court judge, Griffiths, was the last one, I think, who said on the 29th of July 2021. And I think it's Griffiths whom I have quoted in my letter to the Times, which I don't think is going to publish my letter. But it's Griffiths who it's false what he said that Geronimo had been tested twice and Geronimo tested positive to the question that he carried bovine tuberculosis, which is a physical impossibility, absolute lie. But Griffiths went on, even if a third test were to be carried out, and even if the third test were to produce the result no, meaning that baby angel Geronimo was absolutely innocent of the allegation, the demonization, and the lie that he carried any infection. Griffith said even if that were the case, then the Secretary of State, at that time it was evilness somewhere from Dorset, that evilness was still entitled to go ahead and carry out the what he was saying, Griffiths, was that the concept of rule of law doesn't matter. The concept of innocence doesn't matter. The concept of vindication by scientific process doesn't matter. Now, where do you begin to condemn these personifications of evil? So I'll end this edition here at 26:41 UK time. Sorry, 26 minutes 47 seconds is the length of the video, and the time is 20:42 GMT, and the British Standard Time is 21:42 UK Standard Time.